Hi there, Mike here from Haven of Code, and I'd like to deviate a little bit today from our beginner series, so if you're watching that, my apologies, but I will get onto more of those videos in the next day or so. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit today about working with video within Logic Pro, because I know this is quite a popular topic. So what I'm going to do is use an example of a project that I'm working on to build and compose a theme tune for our channel, or specifically the videos I upload to their channel. You may have seen that Dan, who does the Ableton portion of things, has already had a go at his take on it, and he stuck it on the front of his last video. It's pretty cool, and we decided that it would be cool if we did our own takes, seeing as we're both musicians in our own right. So I'm just going to run you through how I ran the session to get the most out of the process, and also just run through my workflow. So the first thing I want to mention is I've got a channel strip here, and the first thing that you may or may not notice is instead of being stereo, it's surround. So what I did to do that was, if I go to create new track and audio, instead of being mono or stereo, I want it to be surround. So I click surround, pretty self-explanatory, and this just means that if anybody watches it on a surround system, like on their Apple TV or something like that on YouTube, it'll sound awesome. But if you listen to it in stereo, it should sound fine as well. So I'm going to hit create, and we've got a surround track there. And the first thing we're going to need to do is drag this file in down here. This is the actual video file that I need to drag in, so that obviously I can make sure that the video corresponds to the music I'm going to compose. So drag that over the session, click and hold, and just drag and drop. Simple as. Okay, so the video's in. The next thing that I did was I went over to the media tab and the loop section, and in here we have different view choices that we can view our loop library in, and I'm going to go to the column view for this purpose. Just makes it a bit easier to hone in on the loop that you actually want to work with for this particular purpose. So I'm going to go to all, then we get another tab that's got all our different moods in. I'm going to scroll down to J if I can for jingles, and now if I click jingles here at the top, with it says there's 506, so enough to choose from there if you ask me. Then we have all the jingles that I could possibly want to work with, and we can audition a few. Now, as these ones are tempo specific, they will actually go to the tempo of our song, which can be adjusted down there. You see I've got it at 80 beats per minute, but I can easily change that. So let's say, for argument's sake, this is not going to work at all, but if I drag this in, then it should play pretty in sync with the movie if I hit the space bar. As you see, the movie went alongside it as well. Not the right mood at all for this particular bit of graphic, if you ask me, but just to show you how I can drag different loops in and audition them. If I delete that and also delete this track, in Magic Blue Peter mode, we used to have that in the UK when I was a kid, I can say, here's a session that I made earlier. And as if by magic, the session appears. This is what I've been working on for this particular bit of footage. So first of all, I'm going to go up to our track headers here and unmute them all just by hitting the M's that are in blue. And then I will just play it from the beginning so you can hear what we're dealing with. Okay, so that's the introduction. I had to chop a jingle up a little bit to make sure it was in the correct time frame that we wanted to work in. And then I also added an outro section. So if I feel inclined to add an outro to any videos, this will sound quite cool. And I added some insert effects over here on our channel strip, which I'll talk about in a second. Okay, and as you could hopefully hear, if we move this movie over a sec, the insert effects in question were on this track here, Audio 4. And they are an EQ which I chose to take all of the low end out and just leave the high end in, so we get, if I go over here and solo it by hitting S on the track, you'll hear that I have a kind of telephone effect on that portion of the sample that I just thought it was a cool way to end it. And I also have a thing called a vibrato. This is going to make it kind of wobbly, and if I click on the insert effect, it brings up my plugin so I can tweak it just the way I like. And again, it makes it kind of sound wobbly, and I just thought it was a cool way to end it. So, and the reason I've obviously chopped this up is so I can eventually bounce them out. And the way that we bounce a product out of Logic, for those of you who don't know, is you'll see that I have this loop here, and I also have my cycle up in the upper echelons of the page, and if I click inside it, it will highlight. And if I drag it back to just the length of the loop, I can either go up to this icon in the top right that says bounce, or I can do it the way that I prefer to do it, which is to say Command B on the keyboard. And we'll get a save box, and we'll just go through the different steps here. The save as name is basically what your computer is going to call the file when it gets saved onto your hard drive. So I'll call it loop just for now. And this is obviously where it's going to save it. I don't want it to save in bounces folder because that could be anywhere on my Mac, so I'm going to click desktop and save it on there. And now we get down to the interesting bit. I've got a destination tab down here. We can do PCM, which is kind of a studio file format we don't need for now. We can do MP4A, so that's M4A, excuse me, so that's iTunes stuff. We can do a burn file. We can just do an MP3. I'm going to do an MP3. It's going to turn it into a stereo file. And there we go. We're going to click bounce. And you'll see that it has ventured onto my desktop. And no, before you ask, I'm not going to try and pretend that these two takes on this video haven't been shot months apart from each other. All I can say was that there was a problem with the file format, and I had to go back and reshoot the last couple of takes of this video to show you how to bounce the file out of the session that I was working on at the time. But I hope you found it useful. If you want more tutorials like this, please subscribe. Any comments, feel free to reach me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Cheers for watching.